Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Today's topic, a photographic journey through wild Borneo, presented by NatHab Expedition Leader Court Whelan. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Court, take it away.
Hey, thanks, Rob, and thanks everyone in the audience for joining today. Well, we're of course greeted with this very handsome male proboscis monkey right off the bat, and we're going to get into details all about these critters and a host of other wildlife species that predominate and inhabit Borneo. This presentation was inspired not just of my personal love of Borneo. I hope that's going to come through. It truly is one of my tippy top favorite places on the planet, but also inspired by a very recent photo expedition that I returned from. And so I have a litany of fresh photos, many of which are in this presentation, or I should say, many of the photos in this presentation are fresh from this recent expedition. And gosh, I'm so excited to share those with you. So let's just go ahead and dive right on in. This is going to be a photographic journey throughout this incredible island, the incredible wild kingdom of Borneo. And I always like to start off my trips and especially this kind of topic of reminding folks that this is not natural habitat tours. This is natural habitat adventures. So an adventure is an unusual, exciting, typically hazardous experience or activity. So this presentation, nor is Borneo hazardous, but it is extremely unusual and exciting. And I think that this definition and those two words in particular are what keep me coming back to explore, to show people, to teach people in the field, to teach people and show people via webinar, to continue photographing it, because no two trips have ever been alike, and because it is so unusual and it is so exciting. So without further ado, so this is a photographic journey, and so the idea is me showing you the journey of our adventure through Borneo through my photography. But I know many of you are wondering, well, is this what Court looks like when he goes into the field? Is this how he shows up to Borneo to capture these photos? And I will say, no, it is not. I'm definitely a light carrier when it comes to photography. I also thought about putting in a couple of slides at the end of this presentation about some of my key photographic techniques, whether it's a big fancy camera or a point and shoot or anything. And I thought about putting those at the very end of the presentation. But then I kind of rethought that and said, you know what, let's give people a little bit of heads up just in the first slide or two about what I'm shooting on and how I'm capturing these things. And again, these couple of very, very quick lessons before we go into the heart of this talk, these couple of quick lessons will be exactly what I'm using, and pretty much for anybody that has any sort of camera out there. So for anybody headed to Borneo, think of versatility. Think of telephoto zoom lenses. Now, my system at bare minimum, really where and how I shoot 95% of the shots you're going to see in this presentation are from the right side of this. However, there's a great camera called the Sony RX10 that I've shot alongside many people, including expedition leaders, including guests, including other naturalists, and it does quite well because it has a 24 to 600 millimeter range. So just know that light and mighty is kind of my go-to for Borneo because we are hiking. You'll see the way we're exploring this country, or this island. Really, it's an island in connection to Malaysia. It is not a country on its own. But the way we're exploring this island is a lot of adventurous type transportation. It's boats, it's planes, it's pretty much everything except for trains, because it's definitely got automobiles and all sorts of other ways to get around. But yeah, just some sort of basic kit will get you these things, these amazing photos. And the things that I'm thinking about that you're going to see in a lot of these shots is that I am underexposing a lot of my photography. And I think that will help match the dimly lit conditions of the rainforest. I'm keeping my exposure at 0 or -1/3 or -2/3. If you're on an iPhone, that's just the equivalent of swiping down after you've tapped the focus, and it just kind of darkens the shot. Also, I switched to spot metering to really help give illumination and the definition on the face. That means I'm exposing to the face of a lot of these animals, because that's what we're connecting to. We're not connecting to the arm or the shoulder of this orangutan. We're connecting to the eyes and the face. Fast shutter is a must. You're going to see that with a lot of this photography. I have a lot of flying bird photos and swinging orangutans and leaping proboscis monkeys in the ensuing shots of this presentation. And so a fast shutter is something that I'm always very keen on. And to give me all that, I'm usually using a pretty high ISO. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And then just as a generality when it comes to wildlife and landscape is I'm just constantly toggling between a shallow and a deep depth of field. Shallow being like an f4, an f2.8, if my lens can handle it, all the way to something like an f8 or f11 for the landscape shots. So I wanted to give this kind of little mini tutorial ahead of time because I know many of you may be photographers yourself. You may be headed to Borneo for a photo expedition or just curious if this is an interesting expedition as a photographer. And I can say wholeheartedly yes. And there are many, many more resources where this comes from. I'm even going to put a link to other presentations I've done, other resources and tutorials on photographing Borneo that I think will help you. Um, Another thing to get out of the gates when talking about the wonders of Borneo, people often think about or ask, what about the bugs? This is a big old tropical jungle. Is it just teeming with bugs that want to carry you off? No, fortunately, this photo is actually taken in Alaska, where sometimes the mosquitoes might do that if you're in sort of peak summertime and it's a bad mosquito season. In contrast, the Borneo bugs are more like this. These are the bugs we're often to find. These beautiful, beautiful butterflies, these incredible proboscis bugs. And so, really, when I think of Borneo, I think of this vast, vast tropical rainforest that is really teeming with life. I like to say it's kind of like how a Costa Rica or an Ecuador or Peru might be. It's got the small stuff, it's got the small monkeys, it's got the beautiful birds and the beautiful butterflies, but it also has the big stuff. It's got the only great ape outside of Africa, the orangutan. It's got one of the largest monkey species in the world, the proboscis. It's got elephants and hornbill birds and a suite of nocturnal wildlife. And this is Borneo. This photo represents everything that I know and love about Borneo. Um, Throughout the course of this presentation, I'm also going to be giving you some fun factoids, and I'm going to kind of orient you as to where we're going along this journey, kind of following along the itinerary that Natural Habitat does. And so this is Borneo too. In the map, you can see here, just in the bottom right-hand corner, you got Australia just in the bottom right little map. Just above that and to the left, you see the word Indonesia. That large, somewhat U-shaped island in the middle is Borneo. It is in the middle of the Indonesian archipelago, kind of in Southeast Asia, more or less. You can see it is indeed an island. It's the third largest island in the world, and it's actually made up of three different countries. You heard me say that before, that we are going to the Malaysian part of Borneo, but the island is also partly Indonesian, about almost two-thirds by land area Indonesian, one-third Malaysian, and this little tiny, the Kingdom of Brunei is also located there. You can see also pertinent to this presentation and our trip, you can see here that little white line just to the right of Brunei. That's actually the demarcation of a different state of Malaysian Borneo. You have Sabah in the east and Sarawak in the left. And the NatHab trip indeed does both. Throughout the course of this adventure, we are traveling around in pretty much every which way, shape, or form, like I said, except for locomotive. We have planes that get us to places. We're in boats, not just to transport ourselves, but also to do some great wildlife watching, and of course, vehicles and safari vehicles, electric vehicles on our night drives, so that we're whisper quiet. It's got it all. The topography of Borneo, it does have a large mountain spine going down the middle, and you can see here that relief just right along that margin of the different states and different countries. You can see there's that massive mountain range going down the middle, and it actually gets up to about 14,000 feet all the way in the far northeast at Mount Kinabalu. It's a very, very tall, jagged mountain. However, over the course of this presentation and the course of our entire trip, we are staying in those green areas for lowland, classic lowland tropics. And this is another photo of Borneo. If there is a theme to this trip, it is the exploration of a biological treasure chest, truly a biological treasure chest. With just 1% of the world's land area, it has 6% of its biodiversity. That goes for plants and animals. It's home to 222 mammals. 44 of them are endemic, meaning they're not found anywhere else in the world. 402 bird species, 37 of them not found anywhere else in the world. 15,000 plant species, about 6,000 of them not found, finish the sentence, anywhere in the world, else in the world, other than Borneo. So it's really quite amazing. And it's because of this incredibly healthy, intact, highly biodiverse forest that we get things as big as the orangutan, the only great ape found outside of Africa. And the orangutan isn't just the biggest or only primate. There are many, many other superlatives amongst the primates in Borneo, and we do get to see a good number of them. And probably my favorite, it might shock you, but my favorite primate, maybe my favorite critter in all of Borneo, is this guy, the proboscis monkey with that large pendulous nose, big pot belly. They're arboreal. They have adapted to eat leaves and vegetation that almost nothing else can eat. We're talking about things that are highly fibrous, high in salt content. They're eating mangroves. Can you imagine doing nothing but eating mangrove leaves for your entire existence? So they eat a lot. They spend a lot of time digesting. They actually have a sacculated stomach where it kind of ruminates, almost like how a cow might be. But in addition to the primates, you also have some other really weird critters. You've got a Bornean sun bear, the world's smallest bear. You actually have elephants that roam the riverside of the Kinabatangan River, these pygmy elephants. They're oh so charismatic. But let's come back to this guy for a quick second. The orangutan. You're going to probably hear me say this word several times throughout the course of this presentation because it is really quite a cornerstone of this trip. Orangutan is the correct pronunciation. I'm not exactly sure where we sort of learned the word orangutan, like putting a G on the end of it. I admit when I was growing up and reading biology books, that's kind of how I just naturally said it, orangutan, had a ring to it. But it is orangutan because it actually means in traditional Malay and traditional indigenous languages, man of the forest. Orang being man and utan being forest. So the orangutan was sort of the first man of the forest by traditional folklore. But it's not just the wildlife, and there is an incredible array of wildlife, but the scenery is truly otherworldly. And I know we throw that term around a lot these days and maybe even overuse this otherworldly landscape. But if there's one place I could continue using it for the rest of my life to describe what a landscape looks like, it is definitely Borneo. It is an otherworldly tropical jungle. You can see here Danum Valley on one of these canopy walkways with the mist rising in the early morning. If you could hear the sounds all around me, that'd be another thing. But on slideshow, you're just gonna have to see the visuals, and it's pretty extraordinary. But it's not just trees; it's big open rivers. It's the Kinabatangan River with this just ethereal kind of golden glow of the old world tropics. And I love this trip so much because not just the diversity of plant life and animal life, but because of the diversity in landscapes. You think a tropical jungle just looks one way and that's the be all end all, but in this highly biodiverse biome of the world, there are so many different views, and the way we are able to traverse them, you get so many different looks at this really, really unique, very old part of our planet. In fact, the Bornean rainforest is the oldest rainforest in the world, being something like about 160 million years old. It has survived ice ages. In fact, ice age is kind of a common, I shouldn't say a common theme of this area, but it does have some underlying mechanisms as to how the whole system works. And if you go back to what I just said a few slides ago about the total number of species and then how many are endemic, found nowhere else in the world, you might be thinking, well, Galapagos, like most everything's not found in the world, elsewhere in the world. Madagascar, another island, most things are not found elsewhere in the world. Why is it that Borneo only maybe 25% is unique to Borneo? Well, it's quite an interesting story. It has to do with basically the last ice age, or what we call the last glacial maximum. So when all these big icebergs were floating and pulling air out of the sea, again, about 15, 20,000 years ago, icebergs in the Arctic and the Antarctic, they actually report that there was a land bridge in this area. So all that kind of peach coloration is actually the seafloor that was exposed when sea levels were much, much lower because all the water was locked up in ice. And so actually there was a lot of continuity and ability to move from island to island in this area. So unlike Galapagos, unlike Madagascar, unlike other areas around the world, this was actually connected to the mainland in relatively recent time. Okay, so let's get into the expedition proper. Here we're going to go through this photographic journey with lots of fun tidbits about what's going on with the wildlife, with the ecosystems, et cetera, et cetera. So our adventure starts in the capital of Sarawak, Borneo, in Kuching, and that's just on the left-hand side here. You can see it, that little airport logo. I'm going to zoom in here. So just western, kind of northwestern Borneo, Kuching. And what a lovely place to start the trip. Again, I think it's so unique that the Nat Hab itinerary goes to both states of Malaysia and Borneo. Oftentimes folks just choose one or the other and just do everything they do there. But combining the two, I think, gives a really unique perspective because they are like two different countries. In fact, something that we often go into over the course of the trip is what the kingdoms of Sarawak and the kingdoms of Sabah and the sultans of those areas back in the day, 300-400 years ago, what the difference in culture might have been like. And so they really feel like two pretty distinct areas. Kuching, it is known affectionately as the cat city. You can see that little cat icon there in the eye of Kuching. And I love it because it's just this vibrant tropical capital where there's murals and there's just an inherent love for the city. You have all the wildlife appearing on the sides of buildings, and people just love nature. It kind of reminds me of, maybe Costa Rica, where there is that sort of pura vida lifestyle. They don't say that there. Pura vida is for Costa Rica alone necessarily, but it imbues that love of nature and a love of all things wild. Kuching is a really walkable area. If you are headed to Borneo, I highly recommend coming in early. The food is incredible. The markets are incredible. The photography is amazing. And speaking about food, just walking around and trying the different dishes. One of the main dishes here in Sarawak is to actually fry up these fiddlehead ferns. These are the same types of ferns that you and I might find in a forest behind our house, but they grow wild in tremendous numbers. And eating them fresh as part of some rich Malaysian curry or a fried rice dish is just really, really fascinating. And I know just the first time I have a meal in Borneo, I'm instantly transported back to this area that I know and love so much. Like I said, Kuching is the cat city. It's got these really cool cat sculptures all around it. They might be murals, they might be statues, sculptures, art installations. And it's funny, I ask people all the time, why is it the cat city? And nobody has a real clear, definitive answer. Kusing is actually a version of a Malay word meaning cat. So Kuching, you can make that connection. But the predominant answer is, well, cats are good luck. And I kind of like that. It's the good luck city. So another really cool thing about the Borneo trip is we hit the ground absolutely running. So the very, very first day, prior to any sort of welcome dinner and orientation, we are off to see orangutans. And there's something so visceral, so moving about within the first minutes of starting a trip, seeing the thing you were there to see in the first place, like one of the real cornerstone flagship species. And at Semenga Orangutan Sanctuary, it's a semi-wild area of several square miles where orphaned and captive orangutans are let to re-wild before later introducing them into the bigger jungles. So here you have this completely natural environment where orangutans really can come and go. There's no fences or anything, but it is a little bit of a safe haven for them when there are young orangutans that might need to come to feeding platforms to get some formula, to check up on antibiotics, to monitor their health. But nevertheless, it is a wild population there, and getting photographs like this is just kind of commonplace when you're seeing these orangutans right off the bat in Semenga. And talking about that spot metering, when dealing with this incredible face of the orangutan, that's what I wanted to be in focus. That's what I wanted to expose. And you can see here, it just so perfectly captures, the glimmer, the shine of this orangutan as it looks back at me from the shrubs. And of course, you see orangutans really of all ages in this area, and we have a large flanged male, as they call it. Flanges would be those cheek flanges we're going to talk about in just a little bit. We'll talk about their purpose, and just as a hint, these are for the big dominant males. So you might want to start thinking about why in the world would a big dominant male have these cheek flanges? It's sort of an interesting thing that is a little hard to figure out, but when you hear it, it'll make sense. Okay, so after our first afternoon with the orangutans, we are headed over to Bako National Park or Bako Island National Park. It is sort of loosely connected to the mainland, but as you can see here from an aerial map, it is actually separated by a riverway that kind of cuts off, and it is an island in all sense of the words, and this idea of being this kind of Indonesian, Indochinan, almost South Pacific kind of vibe where you're immediately getting in these longboats and you're motoring over, through these stilted villages that are just built right on the shore of the river. We're going through limestone karst and these big open waterways in these really, really classic boats. And we're seeing some really incredible scenery right off the bat. This is kind of our first foray out into the exterior wilds of Borneo as we get to the farthest reaches of this national park. Bako Island was Borneo's first national park, and it still boasts today It is one of the only places in Borneo that has every single biome except for upper montane forest. So it has dozens of different life zones where every single type of plant and just about every single type of animal is found within these rocky cliffs and beachside transitional forests and mangrove areas. And it's really quite exceptional. So what we'll do is we take those boats over and we immediately land on a jetty and we are exploring. Mangroves are pretty incredible areas. They represent so many good things that I think, frankly, our world takes a little bit for granted. They are exceptional fish nurseries. This is where all the little fish grow up, so the big fish can't eat them as they're gaining in size and feeding on the plankton and feeding on the little microbes that live in and amongst these mangroves. They are a great buffer for waves and erosion. They're an incredible food source, not just for fish and mud skippers and crabs, but also, like I said, proboscis monkeys eat them and the whole circle of life that goes around it. And little known fact is we're realizing they're probably one of the best carbon sinks on the planet, meaning they represent so much above ground and below sea level carbon that they store carbon, they sequester it from the atmosphere. They're a plant, so they breathe it from the atmosphere. They remove it and they store it in these huge underground root systems. And we're finding that conservation of mangroves, not only does it conserve beach erosion and buffer against violent storms like hurricanes and typhoons and the sort, it provides food for, in some cases, our food, meaning it helps create good fish nurseries and good fish stocks. But it also might be a huge solution to climate change. So being able to walk in these elevated boardwalks above these kind of muddy mangrove areas and explore them and look for wildlife and learn along the way is really quite a fun thing. The scenery just instantly is so tropical and so wild. Here is a photograph I shot recently, just silhouetting those beautiful kind of spindly palm leaves and fronds going into that mottled blue and cloudy sky, which is really quite beautiful. I love Baco because it is that forest, it is the mangrove area, it has a dozen other life zones, but it also has this great beach that wildlife love. This is no ordinary pig. This is the Bornean bearded pig, not your average swine for sure. It is endemic to Borneo, and this is one of the last strongholds, this national park, of wild populations. So even though you may have seen wild pigs before, and I've seen wild pigs before, they are truly something to behold. And because they're so unafraid of humans, you can get quite close to them. You can really see the bristliness of the beard. And again, bringing one of those telephoto lenses, I would just sit with these Bornean bearded pigs for minutes and minutes and just get closer and closer with my telephoto to really capture a part of this animal that not a lot of people see. So I love this area because it does provide the forest and the mangroves, but it is really fun to be walking on a secluded beach in, essentially Southeast Asia, looking for wildlife while you're, toes deep in the sand. Really quite special. One of the other great things is, like I said, one of my favorite animals in Borneo, the proboscis monkey. This is one of their key areas. This is a wild population of proboscis monkeys and very likely to encounter these on Baco Island. And again, they're relatively unafraid of humans and being able to, with a telephoto lens, get closer and closer and really showcase what makes them so special, which is that schnoz. It is that nose. This is a large dominant male, sort of akin to how I was talking about with the large orangutan male with those cheek flanges. Their gusto is in their nose. And it's still, a lot of debate in the scientific literature about what the real core key purpose is. Sometimes people have thought it's a way, because these are swimming monkeys, believe it or not. Maybe it's like a snorkel. That's probably my favorite theory. Maybe it's a snorkel. Like it kind of floats when they swim. Maybe it just stays above water. But then, as you can see from this next photo of a female proboscis monkey, well, no, because the females don't have that snorkel nose, so that wouldn't make sense. The males certainly don't swim any more than the females, so that's out. And they've sort of all boiled it down to, after a lot of scientific debate, is that the big noses, it's sexual selection. It means dominance. When you can feed yourself, when you can take care of your female harem that is, and young, when you grow bigger, your nose grows as well, and that's a sign of, it's kind of a sign of wealth in the world of proboscis monkeys. So yeah, it's good looking to the females. We'll put it that way. The other thing which I find really fascinating is that the males will vocalize quite a bit, and they'll make these really, really interesting sounds as they're in the treetops, communicating to other troops, communicating to their own troop. They'll often have a harem of a dozen different females and another dozen different young, and they'll use that nose actually as like kind of like a resonance chamber. And they have about 21 different sounds that they'll make. I'm not going to make all 21 of them, but I'll kind of imitate them a little bit. It just sounds kind of like how you would sound if you had your nose closed and just hemmed and hawed. It's like, haw, haw, haw. So there's my proboscis monkey impersonation. But once again, not only just male dominance, not only just sexual selection, but a way to communicate with their troop and keep all their folks close to them and protected. So proboscis monkeys not only are excellent for portraits, I love photographing them at close range with a telephoto lens, but the action photography is really quite cool. We got this one doing kind of a Michael Jordan slam dunk through the air. And this is where that fast shutter speed really, really comes in handy because they're incredibly animated. Those thighs might look kind of spindly, but they are huge leapers. I mean, they are a monkey and they are extremely arboreal and extremely airborne in this case. And throughout the course of an hour watching these guys play around with that big tail that helps them balance. They'll just be bouncing from the treetops, eating this patch of mangroves leaves here, and say, I think the other patch looks better, might taste better, and they just move around quite a bit. So capturing that movement and observing that movement is so beautiful. But you can see here, we got another one of our males here, indicative by that large pendulous nose. But then the young, the juveniles actually start off with a much more dainty appearance. They sort of grow into that. And the young are a little bit more shy. They're a little bit more standoffish. But even these guys make for some incredible portraits as you see them in the trees against that beautiful verdant background. They're not the only primate. We've got another really iconic one in Baco National Park known as the silver langur or silver leaf monkey. Those terms are interchangeable. This is a fresh photo from Baco just gosh, it's been about a month ago, with that beautiful catch light. Something I always look for is when an animal is looking off to the side and the sun is just at an angle, the sun and the sky reflect, and it provides that glimmer of life in the eye, that inquisitiveness, that sort of that shininess known as catch light that I think is a really great thing to photograph. Sometimes they're in the full sun and we can't catch that, but then you get that incredible iridescence on the fur, the hair. And the local name for these silver langurs or silver leaf monkeys, the local name is the David Beckham monkey. And I'm not kidding there. That's really what they call him. David Beckham over there, David Beckham over there. And that's, of course, because at one point in David Beckham's career, he had a nice kind of mohawk with his hair, and people think they bear quite a resemblance. Now, one of the most fascinating things about these silver langurs is their baby. They have these orange babies. And what an interesting phenomenon here. It's like a little Teletubby, right? I don't know if you remember Teletubbies, a little bit before or a little bit after my time as a youth, but nevertheless, I know what they are with those big ears and kind of roundish head with a little tuft of hair on top. And you got to ask yourself, why in the world with this relatively camouflaged animal? Remember, we're dealing with a dark, dim rainforest, so that kind of shiny black fur helps them blend in. Why would you want your babies to be so obvious? It's kind of like an alarm call, right? Like you're advertising your most vulnerable, precious part of your troop to the eagles and the hawks and the snakes and the various cat species. Well, the theory goes is that a lot of these types of primates actually have very different types of baby coloration. And the idea is that when danger does approach, the troop themselves actually see their bright baby and swarm their baby. So they know with a little bit more ease at all times, where are our youngest? Because after about a year, they turn normal silver and black color. But where is our youngest? Where is our most vulnerable? So when that hawk does go flying overhead, when the cat is on the prowl, they immediately go, they swarm, and they protect. And I think it's a really, really unique adaptation. Again, you'd think make them as camouflaged as possible so they're the least likely to be spotted. In this case, primates being so advanced, they've thought of a different way. Let's make them easy to find and we'll protect them. But not all the silver langurs are silver. And this is something that scientists still don't really know a whole lot about, is that in some rare cases, kind of like how a spirit bear might be, if you know about spirit bears, they're in the coast of kind of British Columbia, Canada. It's a version of a black bear basically, but they're completely white. In these guys' cases, about 5% of their population or less are entirely orange from baby to adulthood, and really quite interesting. You would think this would be a little bit maladaptive, right? Now you don't have that difference in coloration. But once again, nature, life will find a way. So most likely for where these guys are living at this time, it's a little bit more adaptive for them, but still a mystery. A lot of mysteries in Borneo. People often ask about snakes. Will we see snakes in Borneo? I say very rarely, but if we do, I really look forward to it because this is a somewhat rare sighting. But the Bornean keeled pit viper is just about the size of a dinner plate or a small saucer, and they're absolutely incredible to photograph. They're completely quiescent. They're very relaxed. They're relatively dormant during the day, and again with a nice telephoto lens they make for some amazing photographic subjects with that beautiful kind of Coke bottle green color. One of my favorite critters in Borneo. The birds throughout the trip, this is a fresh photo that I just got really lucky to take. We were on our boat back from Baco Island, and I just noticed this white-bellied sea eagle circling around looking for a fish. And with the latest and greatest camera, I was able to just snap 20 frames a second, and I got that one photo where its talons are fully extended, wingtips up, just about to catch what I later determined to be a small catfish, but a photo I'm really happy about and quite proud of. It was an incredible moment reviewing that and saying, oh my gosh, I really did get it. Sometimes it does work out. So as we continue our journey, I can say there's nothing more refreshing than exploring an island in Borneo, replete with monkeys and beautiful critters, than sipping on an ice cold coconut as we wait for our ride back to the hotel. Okay, so here we're making a major transition in the trip as we're going from Sarawak. You think we've covered a lot already, but the most of it's yet to come. And we will fly from that sort of western corner all the way to the northeast of the island, and we get further and deeper into the heart of Borneo. Where we're actually headed next is we're going to go through Kota Kinabalu Airport, and we're going to make our way to Sandakan, where we will swing on over to Sepalak. This is one of the more revered, renowned orangutan sanctuaries in all of Borneo. That goes for Indonesian and Malaysian Borneo. And it really put this idea of wildlife rehabilitation and specifically primate rehabilitation on the map as a model for how to raise infants, how to keep mothers and infants together, how to rewild them, and how to sort of coexist with even the larger males that exist in the area that might wish to breed, that might be a little more aggressive. So it's really amazing that they've done such an incredible job in not just being a wonderful refugio for orphaned orangutans and orangutans that have been recaptured from the pet trade, but also again, reintroducing them into the wild and doing a heck of a lot of research on orangutan behavior at the same time. So that's the Sepalak Orangutan Sanctuary. That's our second time to see orangutans out there, and it is really quite amazing. I want to take this time to talk a little bit more about those cheek flanges. So here we have a really classic big male with that big kind of parabolic shape to its head, very wide and flat, but kind of curved outwards. Well, not all males, this is a male right here, not all males have those big cheek flanges. In fact, it's really only the dominant males. Here's just a graphic I pulled online. You can have an adult male live its whole life being quote unquote unflanged. It's not until they reach dominance and not until they have presumably battled other males and acquired, a small, I don't want to say harem of females because it is sort of just a one-on-one. They don't group females like the proboscis monkeys do. But until they've mated, until they've reproduced, they will not really achieve this dominant status. So any guesses? Of course, I can't hear you in the audience, but maybe some people may have gotten it right. This parabolic shape of their head is believed to amplify their roar. And I could say amplify their call, but it really is a roar. It sounds like a jaguar. It sounds like a lion. It is incredible. It's projected and heard from over a half mile away. And the idea is that they can make this massive guttural call, a vocalization to announce their presence, say, hey, this is This guy's name is literally Big Mike. So Big Mike's in town. Are there any females out there? And it is just, I'm not going to reproduce this roar because it is just a very classic guttural, kind of scary roar. But the idea is that parabolic shape of its head helps project that sound forward, kind of like if you were to cup your hands over your mouth and yell, it sends all those sound waves forward and lets the sound travel further, which gets them to reproduce more, have more available females, cover more territory, have more offspring, and then those genetics flow through the population. So I think it's a really, really interesting, very, very different look. You know, like there aren't a lot of critters at this level of taxonomy or this level of development, this level of evolution that look extremely different, really at any point in their adult stage. Yes, from early subadults to adults, you might see big differences in polar bears or other bear species or other monkey species. But to grow these cheek flanges, wow, what a wonder of evolution there. So while we're in this area, this is our opportunity to see the sun bears of Sepalak. And this is a really fascinating story. Not only do we get to see and photograph and marvel at these absolutely beautiful, highly endangered bears, but we get to see the man who is single-handedly, well, I shouldn't say single-handedly, he's got an amazing team around him, but he really has spearheaded saving wild sun bears and was actually one of the key top nominees for the CNN Hero of the Year awards back in 2017. Before we meet him, I wanted to just quickly kind of give you a little chart of where sun bears sit. So we have 8 bear species of the world. The right 2 critters are the procyonids. These are the raccoons, the lesser or the red pandas, sometimes considered to be related to the giant panda. Nope, not the case. It's the Ursidae. It's that entire family of all 8 to the left that are all related. And you can see here the sun bear is actually most closely related to the American black bear and the Asiatic black bear. But they are quite small and they are almost exclusively arboreal. They do not have a lot of fat on them. They do not have a lot of hair. So you can actually see this is a very normal look with a kind of Rottweiler wrinkles in the forehead. They weigh between 1 and 200 pounds, which is really quite small for a bear. And as you can see here, Dr. Wang Sute, who is the gentleman I just spoke of, with one of the little cubs, the adults are not much bigger than this. Like that is about the size of what we're looking at. They are like a large dog, essentially, is what sun bears look like. Now, of course, on the right, that is not a large dog. That is a small, really, really cute baby sun bear. I wanted to show just a suite of photos here from a recent expedition because I'm so proud and so happy to have seen these guys in their natural element, just loving life. You know, like when you sometimes see dogs smile, you don't really know if they're truly smiling. It might just be them breathing heavy, but you'd like to think they're smiling. And these sun bears are being saved, unfortunately, because their natural habitat of forest is diminishing out in the wild. But we'll get to that in a second. Just wanted to cycle through a few of these. They sometimes are gregarious in these semi-wild habitats. And getting back to that smiling, you know they have a good life. And the whole idea is that they are rescued from the pet trade. They might have been orphaned. I don't believe any were actually born in the sanctuary itself. But nevertheless, they often do come as cubs, and they're even or they're either allowed to live their full lives in this natural area that Dr. Wong has set up, or they are truly rewilded. And where the rewilding happens is where we're going for the rest of the itinerary. Now, in full disclosure, I have not personally seen a wild sun bear, but I do know folks that have, and it'd be quite a special sighting. But that goes back to that whole definition of adventure. It goes back to why I love Borneo so much, is that it is truly possible at any time on any trip when you're in this dense thicket of forest that sun bears are fair game. So from here, what we're doing is we're headed over to the Kinabatangan River. We're getting further into the wilderness, deeper into these natural habitats of Borneo, and we spend the next 3 or 4 days on the river. We're floating by these incredible floating villages. We're seeing more proboscis monkeys, and being able to see these in multiple different habitats and multiple different settings is so amazing. Not just because I could truly never get tired of seeing them, but it allows us more chances and more opportunities to see those really, really rare, tender moments like this photo that I snapped from just a couple weeks ago of a mom with her young baby. And you can even tell, going back to that lesson of the orange baby, notice how they're just quite a bit darker on the head, and you can't quite tell from this photo, but on the back, again, that signal, hey, where do I look for the different colored baby? And we're going to go straight to it. So proboscis monkeys abound on the Kinabatangan River, one of the real last refuges of proboscis monkeys. And I should say, from a conservation standpoint, while I love orangutans, orangutans are actually found on other islands in Indonesia. A couple other, actually, well, one other island, two other species. But proboscis monkeys not found anywhere else on Earth, and their numbers are actually quite a bit lower than orangutans. So, yes, I want to give orangutans all the spotlight, all the attention they deserve. But I want to make sure that one of our other incredible primates also receives the conservation attention by way of some of these photographs here. So really cool moment with the proboscis monkeys. And it's not just proboscis monkeys; it's other primates like the silvered langur here. And even though we might be seeing the proboscis monkeys in huge numbers, oftentimes just single animals can be incredible photographic subjects. And like I was saying in the beginning, I'm looking for light. I'm always trying to create that ominous vibe. And the Kinabatangan River is an exceptional place for that because you have this huge wide open sky, and pretty much every morning and every evening has this incredible light, whether it's painting light on a wildlife species, on an animal, on a monkey, or you're just simply snapping a glorious sunset with your iPhone. It is really quite magical. And the way we explore the Kembatangan, it really is a big shift and change in the trip because previous to this, we're on hiking boardwalks, we're exploring via vehicles, but here we are all in these small skiffs on this calm, smooth river, going through these incredible mangrove tunnels. With a group kind of like two by two scouting areas with these towering trees all around us. And so what I love so much about Kinabatangan is not just the wilderness that it is, not just the volume of wildlife, but it is the way in which we see it. And you can see here a really cool top-down shot I was able to take of our boats going through one of these small little tributaries through the Kinabatangan River. And it is really quite an amazing, amazing context where you see things like your long-tailed macaques and your pig-tailed macaques, where you see the leaping proboscis monkeys. Now I'm going to show you a slide next, and this is not my photo. I don't want you to get too excited. I have not yet seen a clouded leopard. You can tell by the pixelation, this is something I'm just borrowing, not a full res copy. But I wanted to make this note because I think it's quite fascinating why it is so relatively easy to see this highly endangered monkey, the proboscis monkey, or the leaf-tailed monkeys, the macaques. Why is it so common that they're at the river's edge? If we have this huge jungle all around us, why are they at the treetops or right at the margin of that forest in the water? And the answer comes down to this guy. What these animals do in the sort of beginning few hours of the day and the later few hours of the day is when they go to roost for the afternoon and feed a little bit before dinner, or have dinner, feed a little bit before they rest for the night and find their roost. What they're trying to do, these monkeys that is they're trying to position themselves with their backs to the river because they're looking for these guys. So as a result, what happens is twice a day, every day, all this wildlife will come to the edge of the river for safety because if they know 180 degrees behind them is just the water, nothing's going to come from this way, they're able to survive much better by just keeping watchful eyes into the forest because of the clouded leopard, because of the marbled cat, because of a host of other possible predators that they might have in this forest. The Kinabatangan River is also home to dozens of species of pitcher plants. These are small, sort of Venus flytrap type plants where the inside is filled with a little sugary secretion, and then they have these recurved hairs and barbs that disallows the small fly or the ant or the beetle or even sometimes small lizards or frankly even sometimes small mice. It disallows them from crawling out. And the variety of these carnivorous plants is really fascinating when we hike around behind our lodge to look for these. If you like flying bird photography, or if you don't know you like flying bird photography, you will like flying bird photography. And I got to say, of all seven continents, of all 80 some odd countries that I've been to and guided photo expeditions on, there is no better place for flying bird photography than the Kinabatangan River. There are 8 hornbill species. We have a really honest to goodness chance to see all of them. My favorite, of course, is this guy, the rhinoceros hornbill. This one taken with a slow shutter speed as I panned and kind of got some movement in the background. But of course, if you don't like flying birds, they perch as well. We can see here a mating pair, the male in the back with that red eye and the female in the front with that kind of cool blue eye, going through a courtship ritual. But again, the real superlative here is the ability to track these birds as they fly around. And again, you don't have to be a photographer to enjoy this. To see this bird with what I would imagine to be a 6 or 7 foot wingspan. I mean, you can hear this thing flying from a ways away, big pterodactyl type swooshes with these huge wings and that big kind of pompadour type casque to help amplify its vocalizations. Notice the trend here is really a sight to behold. There are other flying birds like the Brahminy kite. We have purple herons, and again, having that big sky and area teeming with wildlife is you're just stacking the deck in your favor on the Kinabatangan River. So the elephant in the room on the Kinabatangan is the elephant in the Kinabatangan. Pygmy elephants, this is one of their real strongholds in Borneo, and they're absolutely incredible. They are elusive, I will tell you, just to set expectations. We do a really good job. We have a very, very good track record of seeing them on trips. However, it's not a guarantee because they are very, very elusive. They travel in packs and they're either there or they're dozens of miles interior where you have no access. But we have a really, really good track record. Just to kind of set the record straight of what a pygmy elephant is in terms of size, it's still a big elephant. People often think it's this little teacup size thing. No, it's still a pretty darn big critter. Yes, the babies can be quite small, as you can see from just the dead middle of that frame, but they do stand 8 or 9 feet tall. They come to the river to drink. They come to the river because that's where the sunlight hits a lot of the vegetation with that openness and grows a lot of the fresh, new protein-rich grasses. And you can see here, when we're lucky, just how close we might be able to get to these proboscis monkeys at a safe, sustainable, conscientious distance, of course, but just right on shore, these elephants are going about their daily ritual as if the world is all good. And it's just an incredible, incredible experience to see these massive elephants in a forest context. But ultimately, Kinabatangan, love the wildlife, love the scenery. End it with this really cool rainbow shot that I snapped this past trip. We had a little bit of a shower on our drive, which of course got our ponchos out. But then 5 minutes later, we were greeted to this incredible double rainbow that really capped off an amazing day of wildlife photography. So for our final destination on the trip, we are headed from the Kinabatangan River, this 350-mile long river, into the dense, real heart of Borneo, into the middle of the jungle, into the Danum Valley Conservation Area. And this is indeed that 160-million-year-old rainforest that is just teeming with wildlife. It's got all the big stuff, it's got all the small stuff, and it's in an incredible setting. As a quick conservation aside, one thing that we will be seeing as we make that traverse, which is just kind of a part of things, is this idea of palm oil. And I know I'm running out of time a little bit, so I don't want to spend too long here, but I do have to get the conservation message out, is that palm oil is something that is indeed converting landscapes of Borneo. We are working our absolute hardest to incentivize nature conservation, to incentivize saving wildlife for things like ecotourism and conservation travel, showing that wildlife is more valuable alive, showing that habitats, ecosystems are more valuable alive, intact than transitioned or changed and completely, in this case, changed into a palm oil plantation, which is a tremendous monoculture. So what I'll encourage you to do if you're interested in learning more on this, World Wildlife Fund has an incredible program to certify palm oil, to lessen its impacts, to do research on palm oil. But it is something that, over the course of the trip, it's something that we do see and something I do talk about. So on this virtual journey, I wouldn't want to miss this topic that we must be a little bit more aware of palm oil as an ingredient in our foods, in things like lipstick and in shampoo. Not because palm oil is inherently bad. The thing is palm oil is actually a pretty incredible product on its own. It produces like 10 times the amount of oil per unit area than the second most producing oil. The problem is we humans, when we find the year of plenty, when we find something that just produces and produces and produces, we find a way to put it in everything. And that's essentially what's happening. The plant itself is not bad. It's just the way that we're using it. So unfortunately, if there is one thing that is limiting populations of pygmy elephants, that is limiting populations of orangutans and proboscis monkeys, it is palm oil in Borneo. But we're on a quest to change that. So for our final, most glorious part of the trip, we are headed to Danum Valley, which is completely untouched from all the agriculture. It is a symbolism in my mind of the way the world is meant to be. It's one of the most glorious ecosystems on Earth. It is probably one of my favorite places on Earth. That is the Danum Valley. And you can see these huge trees you saw from the landscape photo before, just incredible vistas. They are some of the largest, oldest tropical trees on Earth. And this is what I want to talk about. One more really fascinating thing is the idea of gliders in Borneo. We haven't talked about this yet, but there are all these animals that fly in the forest. And this is one of the most iconic, the red giant flying squirrel. The photo on the bottom is actually not the red giant. It's the white-faced red giant, which is slightly different, but I wanted to find a great photo of that extended wingtips because it's just so fascinating to see how big this animal is, so fascinating to see how they fly and how they glide. But the overall idea is that Borneo is really unique in that it has a lot of these really tall emergent trees. Emergents are the ones that actually go way higher than the canopy. Canopies are the top of the forest from everything that you and I know. When we're around the US, around Canada, in most forests, the canopy is the top. But in the Bornean tropical rainforest, the number of emergents and the lack of vines and connectivity between these tall emergent trees means that animals over the last, truly millions of years have figured out the best way from point A to point B in these tall trees where the food is, where the transportation is, it's the highway of the canopy, is to adapt a way to fly. And so squirrels have done this. There are a number of flying squirrels. They're probably the best representative example where they have this thing called a patagium. It's a giant wing flap. You can now see where the idea of squirrel suits came from. But other critters fly as well, believe it or not. There are flying lizards. There are flying frogs. You can see here just the hands themselves, webbed feet, actually help them glide through the canopy, and it's pretty amazing. But the reason I'm just so in love with this part of the trip, part of this world, is the sense of place that we have. This massive teeming jungle giving us unprecedented access to the canopy to see these gliders, to see the other animals, to see the orangutans. And we do so in one of the most glorious eco lodges of the world. Now, in my style and Nab's style, it's not necessarily the primary reason to go to Apache Forest is to stay at an incredible place, but this is one of these places that not only is it one of the best rainforests of the world, it is one of the best eco lodges, sustainably built, sustainably run, incredible access for the Borneo Rainforest Lodge. Absolutely incredible. And this is probably our best chance to see the most orangutans. You probably thought we saw a lot before in the trip, but Danum Valley has the largest wild population of orangutans over the course of the trip. And whether we're seeing incredible sights like this or we're watching one of the young female orangutans build a nest for the evening, orangutans actually build nests every single day of the year. That's 365 nests at least. Sometimes they build a nest to nap in the middle of the day. Is really a sight to behold because we have our time, we can take our time, we can stay out until evening. Our lodge is right there, and we can just watch the whole process unfold of orangutans going about their daily lives, which is quite fascinating. I'm actually going to skip that slide real quick just because I know we're running out of time, but I did want to mention this one because the Bornean orangutan is one of three species. There's actually another species on the island of Sumatra known as a Sumatran orangutan, and then a new species just as of a few years ago known as the Tapanuli, another one on Sumatra in a much more reduced population. But as you can see, the largest stronghold of orangutans indeed on the island of Borneo, but it is indeed one of three species. But I think, seeing orangutans out in the wild, like this little guy picking off figs from a fig tree, I think so much why we love them is how much we identify with them. It's like sitting down with a troop of gorillas. They're very human-like in their musculature, very human-like in their behavior, in their dexterity of their fingers, and their feet. That's a little unhuman-like, but it's incredible to see them, traverse the canopy and move around, those watchful eyes, searching for fruit, looking back at you, just kind of keeping tabs on you, moving around. And in this case, this parental care, the mother pulling the young infant, or not infant, but the young, her offspring across this little vegetative rope, this little branch to safety. And this whole time, here's how close we were to this whole scene. It was absolutely incredible. We literally had to get up from eating breakfast, put the coffee down, walk 5 feet, and this whole scene was unraveling before us, which is, again, why I love Borneo, why I love this place. But as we roll into our final few slides, The other real big reason I love the Danum Valley in this last part of the trip is the ability to use these electric vehicles for night safaris. We will actually go on the road, which is a fantastic place to look for all sorts of night wildlife. Sleeping birds actually are wonderful to see in the night. This is a little kingfisher. We can see some incredible frogs in the frog pond. We have a chance of seeing the clouded leopard. We have a chance of seeing the marbled cat and the bay cat and the flat-headed cat. A little bit harder to find, but things like the Malaysian civet is an incredible sighting that we do often see. So being out there in this jungle and hearing the sounds of the imperial cicadas, being able to see the smaller incredible stuff like the proboscis bugs and the frogs is just amazing. But our last species we're gonna get a little glimpse of here in this presentation is the red or the maroon langur. So yes, another primate. Yes, another orange primate, not an orangutan, but the maroon langur. And like the silver langur, they have different colored babies. You can see this white baby right there, just kind of mid pose, mid yawn, maybe. I don't know. It looks a little scared. Is that warning or that sort of alert coloration? Remember, different pattern, different coloration of the fur than the parents to help identify them when trouble comes. And once again, just the depth of the rainforest, the photo ops that we're likely to have of not just the iconic species, but species you probably didn't even know existed, of these somewhat shy, but somewhat sometimes very, very relaxed maroon langurs as we photograph them throughout the trees just by happenstance as we're hiking down the trail. Oh, and I lied. I do have another species here. This is one of the weirder ones. So I do have to mention this. This is like the flying squirrel in the sense that it has this huge patagium, but it is very different. That it is called a flying lemur. It is closely related to primates, kind of a little bit closer than some of the other species. But it is an amazing, amazing critter because it has this ability to climb trees, soar all the way up to like a football field in length, so like 300 feet in length, easy. And they're another iconic resident of Danum Valley. But then the real final species I wanted to touch on is my favorite nocturnal species. I had a chance to see one of these, not one, but two nights on this most recent photographic trip. And they really vie for my favorite animal in all of Borneo. Very, very close to the proboscis monkey in terms of something I enjoy photographing. And it's the Western tarsier, completely carnivorous, completely nocturnal. And what they do is they will often be seen on these trees and they'll stay there completely relaxed for a few minutes and you can photograph them again with a telephoto lens and get these incredible photos of their cute little faces, these incredible amber eyes. And gosh, with that, I'll roll into probably my favorite photo from the last trip. You've already seen it once, but I think that if there's one photo that really summarizes Borneo to me, as much as I love the wildlife and focus on that, it's this incredible forest, this is incredible expanse. It's the feeling that this photo gives me when I see it. That's the feeling of Borneo. So with that, I thank you so much. I am fine hanging on for questions. I know I went all the way to the tippy end, but I'm sure we have questions. So Rob, I'm a-okay answering. And just wanted to cue you into a couple things. I'm trying QR codes here just to keep things fresh and new and techy and innovative. If you want to learn more about what World Wildlife Fund's doing in Borneo with the Heart of Borneo project and its palm oil and everything, that first QR code. And if you want a full photo presentation just on photographing techniques or photographic techniques for Borneo, that's that second one at the bottom. Okay, I talked a lot. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Court. So before we dive into the question section, I would like to remind everyone that if you do have questions, you can submit them via the question field in your control panel. Just go to the upper right-hand corner where you see those three lines. Click on those. It'll pop down a menu. Go ahead and select questions and put them in there. All right, so let's take some questions, Court. So what time of year is the Borneo trip? Would you call it the wet season or the dry season?
Well, so yeah, so there are two seasons in Borneo. There's the rainy season and then the rainier season. We go during just the rainy season. That's kind of a joke, but no, we definitely go during the quote unquote dry season. That would be like March through October. It's the North American, winter months, the December, January, February, that can be a bit rainier. So we do not go there during then. I would say on the average Borneo trip, expect to get rained on a couple of times, like two times, maybe one time, maybe three times. But it is indeed the less of the rainy season. It is the dry season.
Good to know. Thank you. So, because of all that wetness, mosquitoes and insects are something that people are asking about. Is it hard to deal with, or are we going to be
Mm-mm.
okay?
No, you're gonna be okay. Yeah, I kind of put that out at the outset that people oftentimes think that, wow, that looks like a buggy jungle. And it's buggy, but in all the good ways, like those butterflies I was showing you. It's buggy in the biodiverse ways. But that biodiversity is really its key. It's its strong suit. When we think of places that have scourges of mosquitoes, it's central Florida where, we've changed the landscape. We've diverted waterways. We've paved over things and we've taken bats out of the equation. We've taken mosquito eating fish out of the equation. Um, in Borneo, you have almost no seasonality. Like the sunrise, sunset time of day changes by minutes throughout the year. Like it's not like how we have in temperate zones. And so life is extremely regulated and kind of flatlined, and everything figures out a way to eat everything else. So there's this saying by a famous biologist that goes, nature abhors a vacuum. So the thing with why we see bad mosquitoes in places like Alaska or sometimes in the Arctic or sometimes in completely converted landscapes in the US and in Canada and elsewhere is that a there's a lot of seasonality in the Arctic. And so mosquitoes or black flies or whatever, they have like 1 month to do their whole thing. And so they're a scourge. In Borneo, you don't have that. And then again, you don't have those tremendous number of paved over landscapes or changed landscapes. You have a lot of natural landscape left in Borneo. So everything really works to keep everything in check. Now, might you see a mosquito? Yeah. I mean, they might be there, but it's honestly, I rarely put on bug spray. I rarely bring bug spray. I'm in shorts and sandals a lot. It's really not anywhere near as bad as you might be imagining. It's not bad at all.
Perfect. Good to know that. Thank you so much. So, how active is the trip? What level of fitness would you say I need to be at?
Yeah, so it's not hiking like multiple miles every day, but I would say, by the time we're walking on these boardwalks, which there's very, very little topography in Borneo. It's a few miles a day, including the walking around, getting to various parts of the lodges and viewpoints. We're never going to go on a hike that's more than like a couple miles. Mainly because there's so many things to stop and look at, to be totally frank. When we're on the boats, it's kind of like a safari, so very little physical activity there. I would say that the main thing that makes this a physical trip is the heat. And it really is not that hot by way of temperature. Like you're probably looking at 87 degrees, 88. If you live in Arizona, your summers, like southern Arizona, like you're way over that. It's the heat mixed with the humidity. So it's kind of hard to cool off. So that's usually what zaps people. So it's not so much like I'm so tired from this long hike. It's like, wow, this heat's really taking it out of me. That's usually the thing.
Gotcha. Good to That's a good thing to know as well. All right, let's talk about camera gear. Do we have a weight limit on our camera gear when we're
Mm-mm.
jumping on those small planes?
No, nothing different from like a flight from Atlanta to JFK. Like whatever you're doing, getting on those planes, yeah, it's the same. So technically, like every flight around the world has a carry-on quote unquote weight limit. Like if you look in the fine print of your Southwest Airlines flight, you have a weight limit, but I've never seen it really checked or observed. The whole trick, honestly, is don't, make it look light. Like don't make it look like you're carrying 40 pounds of camera gear. Have it in the backpack, have it streamlined, but there is no like real weight limit like we would have on bush flights in Africa or Alaska. It's just like a very commercial flight weight limit. Get a sip of water. Talking a lot. So yeah, very very normal commercial weight limit.
Perfect. Thank you. So, how do you deal with humidity in your camera? Any
Mm,
tips for us there?
it's a really good question. So yeah, this could be a long answer, but I'll try to keep it short. So if you go on the trip, and it's a photo trip to Borneo, you will have someone like me, and there's like a pretty deep spiel on the three strategies. Strategy one, you're not gonna like it, but is not to put air conditioning on in your room. That nobody does that because it's hot. You need air conditioning. But like real pro level, like BBC photographers, Nat Geo photographers that are on assignment for 5 weeks, that's what they're going to do because they want to walk out the door and not fog. The issue is that when your camera, which is dense plastic or metal, it's going to get cold, and then you take it out into the humid air, and all that humid air is going to condense on it because the humidity in the air touches the cold camera, and then gaseous water vapor turns into liquid water on your camera. So the whole trick is like, how do you slowly acclimate your camera to the temperature after being in air conditioning overnight? So the real quick answer, I know this wasn't a quick answer, but what I'll end on with this is what I do in the morning. I always get up, an hour and a half before we're physically going to drive out of the parking lot or start hiking. I'm going to have breakfast, going to have coffee, sit and all that. Um, is I'm going to put my camera bag out just for the top unzipped, just outside my room or at the breakfast area, just to slowly, very passively let the warm air into my camera bag. I'm going to keep all my lens caps on. I'm going to keep all my camera, in whatever pouches or whatever. But I'm just going to slowly, over the course of an hour and a half, let it slowly warm up. And then as I'm getting ready to take it out to take photographs, I'm going to speed that process up a little bit, but I'm not just going to rip open my bag, take my camera out, take the lens cap off and start shooting. I'm going to do everything I can to make that acclimation as slow as possible. So then, let's say I have my bag halfway open and I know, okay, great, we're finishing up breakfast. People are going to go brush their teeth. We got 15 minutes. Then I'm going to open my bag all the way. I'm going to put my camera maybe even on the table, but I'm not going to take that lens cap off. The final thing you do is take the lens cap off because that's the thing you really don't want to fog up. And fogging is just condensing the water. Like your whole camera could get that on it. So it's really, really slow and gradual. It is an important consideration. And if you're on a photo trip, we'll definitely go over that. That's kind of like a cornerstone of it all.
Perfect. We do appreciate that advice, though. That's good to
Mhm.
know. So, what if I just have a cell phone? Is it okay for me to come on this trip? And is there any particular cell phone that you would recommend that I buy? Do I need to get a brand new, really expensive cell phone, or does any cell phone do?
Yeah, so cell phones, I mean, every minute that goes by, cell phones are getting better and better. So you totally could go on this trip and have a great experience with a cell phone. My advice is, the biggest limitation cell phones have is not with landscape photography. In some cases, they're better at photography than the bigger, fancier ones when it's landscapes, but it's the wildlife stuff. So if we see something that might be 20 yards away, the newer smartphones, like I'm an iPhone guy, so like the new ones have a 5 times zoom that's equivalent to like a 120 millimeter lens. Like that's pretty decent. Like you can actually kind of get in on that wildlife. But then really what I advise is if you can't get that perfectly artistic shot that you want on the cover of National Geographic, take a video instead. Because when you get that movement in your camera, and these smartphones have incredible stabilizers on them that you can handhold that with a 5 times zoom, and you can see that motion, that action. And when you look back on it, you're going to really, really like it. So I often advocate people that do rely on smartphones entirely is just do more video than you otherwise would with a bigger, fancier camera, and then just try to get a smartphone with some telephoto capabilities to it. That's the main thing. But yes, for a lot of the trip, it's going to be just great.
Great. So, excuse me. Um, so let's talk about temperature again. How hot is it going to be? And what is how cold does it get as well? Is there a big variation of temperatures?
So they don't have a word in Borneo that means cold. It's just not in the dictionary. So, so it's going to get down to like maybe 78 at night. All the rooms have aircon. That's a great thing. That's a really nice thing. So like you can get nice and cool to sleep, and you can sleep under covers and all that. But the ambient temperature is not going to get really cool at all. Um, it is going to be like the highs are going to be around like 87 or 88, but it feels hotter than that. And it's just the humidity. Like it's the fact that when you sweat, it doesn't evaporate, so it doesn't cool you. And we kind of take for granted um how important that is for our equilibrium. Is that like in many places around the world when we sweat, even if it's a humid place, it still cools us a little bit because of evaporation. And Borneo just doesn't really happen. So there are definitely tricks to stay cool. And we realize this, like we're not standing out in the sun for long periods of time. We're fortunately under the canopy a lot. So there's no real like risk. It's just it does feel sweaty and hot, but as soon as we're out on that walk or that boat ride, the boat rides are actually quite nice because you get the breeze. You're going 15 miles an hour, so that doesn't really feel hot at all. But yeah, as soon as we're out, seeing wildlife, we're getting pretty warm and pretty hot and pretty sweaty, and then we're going to come in and have a really nice, cool electrolyte drink in an air conditioned lunch spot, and it's going to feel great. And there's gonna be fans on, and it's going to I'm ready to go back out again. So there's ways to manage it. It's just, it does feel quite hot, but not like desert hot where like, oh my gosh, like this could be dangerous. It's not like that. It's more of just like an uncomfortable, like, man, I'm sweating a lot.
So, is there one part of this trip that you would say is the most exciting or that you are really excited for people to see and experience?
I mean, really, the whole trip is just an incredible package because of how we see things at different points in the trip. Like it's really an expertly constructed trip, and I didn't construct it, so I'm not I'm not trying to toot my own horn. But the folks, in operations in NatHab, like it is just is perfectly planned, like a story from start to end, and it builds like every day it gets better and wilder. And I think the crescendo, the climax is that Danum Valley, the last part of the trip, where you're just in the most remote, spectacular jungle of the world. So yeah, it's the whole trip is a package, but I think Danum Valley, and I also really like the Kinabatangan. I mean, I'm very, very excited about both those places to show people, but I'm equally excited to meet people on day one and show them orangutans within the first hour. So it's hard to pick a favorite, but I really do like I could go live at Borneo Rainforest Lodge. Like if someone asked me to, that would be my home away from home.
Well, Court, we really appreciate you sharing with us today. I think we're all getting excited about Borneo. Unfortunately, that is going to be the last question that we do have time for. So I'd like to hand it back to you for some closing comments.
Cool. Thanks, Rob. And yeah, sorry I took us a little over time, folks, but hopefully you enjoyed. I know I enjoyed and I loved answering the questions. So yeah, gosh, if there's any takeaway, I hope you have garnered a little bit of an understanding of a very wild, unusual part of our world. And whether you join us on a trip or just simply have this as a great memory of learning something extraordinary about a really special nook of our planet, that's Borneo. That's why I love it. And hopefully you have a little bit of love in you over Borneo too.
Court, thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. And I'd also like to thank everyone who joined us. So if you are interested in information on how you can travel to Borneo with NatHab, please give us a call at the number on your screen, or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. And if you're part of a photo club and would like NatHab to speak to your members about nature and travel photography, email us at webinars@nathab.com. Join us tomorrow for our next daily dose of nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude today's webinar. So long, everybody. We will see you next time.